Our speaker tonight is Ron Miller, space artist, sci-fi illustrator, and author. Space artists are vital in bridging the gap between the charts and graphs in scientific journal articles and our imaginations. They transport us there and light up our imaginations. Ron Miller has nearly 60 book titles to his credit. He has illustrated hundreds of book jackets and magazines, including Scientific American, Reader's Digest, Astronomy, and Sky and Telescope. Shortly after Ron accepted our invitation, I received my copy of the February 2024 issue of Scientific American. His Milky Way artwork adorns both its cover and 3 pages inside. He has designed 10 commemorative postal stamps for the Postal Service and was the production illustrator for the movie Dune. And he has received countless awards. Please welcome Ron Miller.
Glad to be here tonight. Thanks very much for the invitation. This hopefully is going to be fun. My only difficulty thinking about this is I've done, literally thousands of astronomical illustrations and paintings, and how to narrow that down to about 40 minutes or so was kind of a quandary. So I had to pour through pages and pages and pages of pictures and figure out what I'm going to do, and that would be both interesting and fun for everybody. So rather than look at me, I think I'll go ahead and share my screen and just start talking about what I do and why I do it and how I came about doing it. So let me get this thing started here, and let's see, here we go. Put this thing here, and slideshow. Okay. This is a blank screen on purpose.
Okay.
I thought I'd back up a long ways, just give just like a 4-part little history of some space art, some of my predecessors. And I count the first true space art as being from Jules Verne. This image here on the left was done for Jules Verne's novel, Off on a Comet. It was published in 1877. And near as I can tell from all my research, this is the first time anyone had done an illustration of what it looked like staying on the surface of another world. In this case, this case is supposed to be the surface of Saturn, and look at this Saturn's shadow on its rings. So it's 1877. This is probably the first ever true astronomical illustration. On the right is from a novel that Jules Verne collaborated on with the author named Andre Lorey. This is, I didn't write the date down, but it's circa about 1887, I think. And some observers on the moon are observing an eclipse of the sun by the Earth. And they've got oxygen tanks and respirators so that they can breathe, and some protection from the environment, which is, very thoughtful for something that was done, 135, 140 years ago. This illustration was from 1887, 89, showing the surface of the moon from a book by Camille Flammarion. The artist was a guy named Andre Fouché. And up until really the Apollo era, most artists, except for one artist, most artists depicted the moon as being craggy and sort of alpine-like, because they were fooled by the craggy look of shadows on the moon when the sun is low, and they thought that those craggy looking pointed shadows implied pointy mountains, but although they didn't. This is a plaster model of the lunar surface done by a British astronomer and artist named Scriven Bolton. This was done about 1920. Again, showing an eclipse of the sun by the Earth. And again, that craggy, rugged lunar surface everybody expected to see. The first real professional space artist was a French astronomer illustrator named Lucien Rudeau. And he did this illustration of Saturn seen from Rhea in 1927. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with this illustration. It could have been done last week and still be correct. There's the shadow of Saturn's ring, the illumination here of light reflected from the ring back onto the backside of Saturn. There's this picture, really, literally, could have been done last week and without it much change. Rudeau was not only a good illustrator, he was a really superb observer. He did this painting of Mars seen from one of its moons. And again, this is around 1927. And this is based on his observations. He's got, he saw clouds. In other illustrations he did of Mars, he actually depicted small, faint circular shapes all over Mars. I think he was actually observing Mars's craters telescopically back in the 1920s. This is a painting by Rudeau of the surface of Mars. Once again, it's 1927, and he got it absolutely right. The sky is not quite blue. It's sort of a purple, a pinkish blue. Dust clouds, the rusty, barren surface covered with rocks. He got it right. The space artist who really founded the genre was Chesley Bonestell. He's what got me going. He was inspired by Lucien Rudeau and Scriven Bolton, and his first, this was published in 1944 for the first time. And this painting has been called the painting that launched 1,000 careers. And everybody from Carl Sagan to countless astronauts, aerospace engineers, were inspired by this one particular painting to go into their, make careers of space flight, astronautics, rocketry. Even though the painting today is, of course, wrong, this is Saturn seen from Titan. We know Titan doesn't have a clear blue sky, but it was, even still today, this painting is really inspirational. And when I was a little kid in elementary school, I searched this guy out. I'd look for paintings by that guy with the funny name. Paintings like this. This was first published in Life magazine in 1947. Wow. It's a greater Theophysis on the moon. And Bonestell actually should have known better than to do these craggy mountains, because he was aware of Lucien Rudeau's work. And Rudeau, in turn, being an astronomer, always painted the moon with rounded, Apollo-like mountains. But I think that if Bonestell had painted the moon as it really looked, I don't think people would have been as excited about going to the moon as they were by seeing Bonestell's artwork. By the way, here's little astronauts up here on this cliff. So I really think this is what the moon should have looked like. And the fact that it doesn't is the moon's fault, not Chesley Bonestell's. This is a painting Bonestell did of exploration of Mars, future exploration of Mars. And this compares really well. I should have included a picture of this, of Elon Musk's planned Mars base. Musk has published a picture of the SpaceX Mars base. It looks exactly like this. Right down to the his rocket looking exactly the same. But Bonestell was a huge influence on every space artist working today. In the 1970s, Ludek Pesek, a Czechoslovakian artist, came around, and His work wasn't well known in the United States until the mid late 70s. He did a lot of work for National Geographic. This is a painting of the Earth seen from the moon that Peszek did, I think in the 1960s. And Mars by Ludwig Peszek. He did this for National Geographic. And even though this was done with the knowledge of the Viking lander, it compares well with what Lucien Rudeau did in 1927. Saturn seen from Titan by Peszek. Oops. I own this painting, which was one of the main reasons I included it. So these are the first two space paintings I ever did in my entire life. And they were done in 1968 while I was still in art college. They were part of a special project. And I had just seen 2001 for the first time. I've seen it 28 times in the Cinerama Theater. Right? And but I was, even though I was a big fan of Chesley Bonestell, grew up loving space and astronomy and rocketry, I never tried to do my own space art until I saw 2001. So I still have this one, and this one I gave to my school. So these are historic. Nowadays, most of my work is done digitally. I paint, basically it's paint like I would normally paint, but I paint with pixels instead of, acrylics. So I thought I would just kind of run through things starting from the sun and working my way out and do a little show and tell of what I do. This is the sun seen from Mercury. And if there's any questions along the way, go ahead and blurt them out. I'd rather answer questions on the fly than wait till the end when the picture's no longer up and it might not make any sense. So if anybody has any questions, please ask.
We have a question already. Yes, please.
The older illustrators, when you say the picture is a painting, what was their media? What did they use to create these illustrations?
The question was the older illustrators, what did they use as a medium?
Well, the very first ones I showed you were woodcuts, of course, the black and white ones. Rudeau painted in temperas, or gouache, really, which is kind of what you use in school. It's a water-based paint that is tempera. Bonestell, all his paintings were in oils. He painted on illustration board, which is like it's a heavy cardboard, and they were done in oils. And Peszek painted in gouache, which again is a kind of tempera, a water-based paint.
Thank you.
Working my way out, this is Venus. At least what I think Venus ought to look like anyway.
What year did you paint this?
This was done, I think, about 15 years ago.
Okay. I was just thinking of the Venera landings by the Russians that kind of illustrated what Venus looked like in it. Yeah.
And a volcanic eruption on Venus. I figured the sun might, you should probably at least tell the direction of the sun on Venus. Even if you can't see the sun, you probably at least know where it is. And for the Earth, I just thought I'd show the big splat.
Armageddon.
Armageddon.
Yeah, yeah, Armageddon out of here.
Where are you going?
So this is poor little Thera smashed into the Earth. And I am one of my colleagues, a friend of mine, Bill Hartman, who I've done a number of books with, the astronomer. I believe he's the one who really came up with this theory and popularized it for the origin of the Earth's moon.
Mhm.
So right or wrong, it makes a great picture. So that's usually my criteria. And just for the moon, I thought, well, I'll do a natural bridge. I've seen orbiter pictures of these things. It's really where either where a lava tube is collapsed and left a piece in the middle. So you have these this lava bridge. It's about as wide as I think like a 4, maybe 6-lane highway. I think it'd make a swell tourist attraction. This is where all eclipses. There would be an eclipse of the sun by the Earth. Since we're just peeking out here, we got some sunlight. This area is still in sunlight way back here. And the foreground is of course illuminated by basically all the sunsets and all the sunrises on Earth at the same time.
Wow.
Mars, the foggy valley on Mars. Yeah, I really like doing Mars pictures because the landscapes are so varied. I mean, Mars has everything, so it's an endless source of subject matter from Mars is, and it's basically, you know, Arizona. I told some students recently, if you really want to know what Mars is like, go to Arizona and hold your breath. Looking across the crater of Olympus Mons, some explorers over here, and the little vehicle down here. Bonistel used to like putting very tiny figures in his paintings just to give the thing scale. Otherwise, you really don't know how big these places are. And just thought, I just for the hell of it, put a little hint of the fact that maybe Olympus Mons might be just have a little life in it.
Did you do many of these on contract?
It depends on the individual picture. Some are done for some of the books I've done. Some are done for magazines like I did a lot of things for Astronomy and Scientific American. And some are done just because I heard something new and I wanted to see what it looked like. This is an example of that. This is on Ceres, the asteroid, and apparently it has outbursts of plumes of vapor, and so I thought, well, that sounds neat. And the only way I can see what these look like would be to do a picture of it myself. So that's what this is. This is some gas eruptions on Ceres.
I have a question about the stars in the background. Do you use a reference and you try to place the stars in the correct positions?
No. I have when it's sort of necessary.
I didn't recognize the constellations.
These are really just random. And when I do a painting with actual paint, I'll just take a brush, go like this and make it looks like a reasonable looking pattern. If I need to put a constellation in to establish scale or something like that, I'll put the stars in. But for the most part, they're random.
Will your next version of this be, will it have a fish somewhere in the stream, in the geyser?
I should. Actually have a fish being blown out of this thing would be kind of neat.
Or shark, right?
Or shark.
Sharknado.
I have a question back here.
Is a question, please? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what kind of research do you do to, try to make this as authentic as you can? So how do you look for what the scale of the various features should be? Or what do you do to try to get some measure of authenticity, considering this is artwork that folks have not seen before?
You have to repeat that one.
Okay. So let me summarize.
Yeah, yes, please.
What
Yeah.
do you, how do you gather information with regard to scale, size, images, etc., to make your images most realistic? I'm hoping I did your question.
Yes.
Well,
enough.
I do. I have probably a lot of high school math teachers who are laughing themselves silly because I was terrible at math in high school, and could never see any real point to learning things like geometry and things like that. It turns out space art requires a lot of math. For instance, if I show show something in the sky, like say Jupiter, and I know you're seeing it from Io. Well, Jupiter is so big, Io is so far from Jupiter. My visual angle is a certain angle I want it to be. Well, how big do you make Jupiter? In that sky. Well, that requires math, damn it. And so there's a lot of there's a little formula for that, fortunately, for calculating angular sizes of objects in the sky. So I have to do that. Perspective is important, which is geometry. And sometimes it's plain research too. What kind of surface would a place have? What would be reasonable? Is it icy? Is it rocky? What kind of ice? What kind of rock? When ice breaks up, what does broken up ice look like? How do these things look like in a vacuum? All these things have to be considered. Often a picture will take more time in research than it'll take in rendering it.
Wow.
So is that what you're after?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I try a space. I think for a space picture to be successful, it has to be really successful as a landscape first. It's a painting, and all the correct science in the world is kind of for naught if the picture itself isn't aesthetically pleasing. So it has to be correct. At the same time, it has to look good too. It has composition. It has to succeed just as a plain landscape. So the aesthetics is also an important part too.
Once you start painting these, how long does a typical illustration take you to make?
Well, Chesley Bonestell had the best answer for that when somebody asked him how long it took him to do one of his paintings. He said it takes about a week and 40 years of experience.
There you go.
And similar here, these might take only a couple of days and 40 years of experience. If you know what you're doing, there's not a lot of experimenting, there's not a lot of false steps. It's and that may be too much confidence. But most of these so far are digital. When I first started out, all of my space art was done in acrylic paint. It was getting harder and harder to meet deadlines. So some friends of mine kept telling me, you need to start painting digitally. I really resisted it for a long time because I didn't want them to look digital. So I finally did my very first digital painting about 20 years ago, and I showed it around to my colleagues and my space art colleagues, and they said, "Oh, it looks just like a Ron Miller painting," which is just what I needed to hear. But I didn't want it to look like anything else. But I still do traditional media paintings. I have a bunch of those at the end of this. I'll show what I've been doing lately. But they take about the same amount of time to do it digitally or traditionally. It's just that the digital ones are easier to fix if I get it back from a publisher. And they're easier for the publisher to reproduce because they don't have to photograph a painting. The digital art is ready to go. So it's basically technical advantages to the digital art more than anything else. This Oumuamua, I did 3 or 4 pictures of this to show different ideas of what it might be. On the left is a conglomerate of an aggregate object. it's composed of all kinds of bits and pieces stuck together. And this one is a battered solar sail.
Wow,
A
okay.
disc with a lot of holes punched in it. And to do this, by the way, just to show you some, you're asking about technique. I painted all this digitally, sun and all this stuff with my stylus and a Photoshop. This though, I cut a circle out of a piece of aluminum foil, punched it full of holes and photographed it. Then put that into the picture. So this is actually a real object. About 6 inches about 6 inches around. But my theory has always been nothing looks more real than the real thing. So if I wanted to have a huge sheet of metallic material, I use a sheet of metallic material. Now on to Jupiter. Little future exploration. I like doing that. So this is just, I thought it'd be a typical cloudscape on Jupiter, a couple of moons up here. I think that's Io. Juno exploring Jupiter. I did this for Astronomy magazine.
Do you occasionally have the paintings returned for changes?
Oh yeah, I've had paintings go out of date while I've been doing them.
Oh,
And also sometimes too, it's just like technical things, like they'll need more extra space for type, like like text might go in here in the magazine page or over here. And I usually try to leave space like that in the composition so that there won't be any big issues. But sometimes things have to be moved around just for layout reasons. And sometimes technical too. Sometimes, as I said, the news coming in really quick on some new discovery, just keep things accurate. I'll have to make changes sometimes on the fly. But that's another advantage working digitally. It makes it's much easier to make corrections. I must have done, I've probably done 15 pictures of Io. Can hardly go wrong with Io.
That's awesome.
It's got to be, yeah, Io's got to be awesome, yeah. And this is Tohil Mons, that Matterhorn-like peak. That's Europa up here. Io's another one I've done. I enjoy doing too because it's got so many different kinds of landscape. Oh, this was just I did this for a one of my young adult books. It's just a day on Io. I forget how long Io's orbit is around Jupiter. Anybody know? Anyway, I divided it into 6 segments. So these are umpty hours apart, each picture. Probably one of my top 3 favorite subjects in the solar system next to Mars and Io is Europa, with all its glaciers and crevasses and cracks and cliffs and whatnot. It's once again, it's one of those places you can't go wrong with on. It's just it'd have to be one of the most spectacular looking places to visit. So most of these pictures I do because it's the only way I'll ever be able to visit these places myself. So I really try to put myself in these things because I pretend I'm there.
well, that's the same for us because that's the only way we get to visit these places.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad you feel that way because that's exactly what I'm trying to do is make you feel like you're looking through a window or a postcard or something. Some thermal vents on Europa. Io up here. Saturn. Another planet you can hardly go wrong with.
Oh, wow.
Mm.
This is seen from about, as I recall, it's about 40 degrees north latitude. So it's about the latitude, I think, was at about Washington, D.C., I think. So if the Earth had rings, this is what you would see from around that latitude. I did actually, I should have included it. I did a whole series of paintings of with the rings. If the Earth had rings, what would it look like from different places on the Earth?
Wow.
That was a lot of fun. Titan. Titan just after a methane rainstorm. So we got all the methane runoff coming down here. But the storm is still storming out here in the distance. Enceladus. Or my wife likes to call it enchilada. I've done it. I think I've done maybe 10 or 12 pictures of Enceladus and its ice plumes because they're just fascinating. I think they'd be another tourist spot. These things would absolutely have to be beautiful. A thermal spring on Enceladus.
Wow.
A little rainbow here in the ice crystals. Here's the Stanford we're talking about.
Is there a question? Hold on, Ron.
Yes.
Ron, I'm looking at the Atlas of the Milky Way that you did for the February Scientific American, and it looks to me there's a lot of detail in the one of the drawings of the Milky Way. It seems as though you would need to be sitting down with the authors of this article to get this right. There are streams.
They sent me a copy of the article.
Yes.
And yeah, then the authors get to review the artwork and make any comments they want. But apparently I nailed it the first time out of the bat. But
Really?
yeah, I had the full article to work with.
Oh, okay.
And I think I don't know if this little screen over here is showing up, but these are some of Clyde Tombaug's ashes here. So I'm sharing the space with Clyde. But if you look up this stamp online, you'll see the whole story that this really helped inspire the mission, that so much fuss was raised that by this caption, not yet explored, that it actually helped inspire New Horizons mission so they put a stamp on there, which is very cool. My wife and I got invited to the launch, so that was a nice perk.
Yeah.
So I said I have a very proprietary interest in Pluto. I did this picture for Astronomy magazine just before the actual flyby, so I had to make my best guess as to what Pluto would look like, and it didn't come terribly close, but it's pink. I got that. So, by the way, this is a paper model that my wife made for me. I photographed.
Of the
I have it
vehicle?
sitting on the shelf. Pardon?
Of the vehicle?
Yeah, the gold foil is wrappings from a Cadbury candy bar.
You're gonna
She's
inspire
a very good.
everybody Megan-
yeah, my wife's a really good model maker. Well, when we worked on Dune, she was a model maker and
Wow.
they made models for that. This is a lot of fun. And Pluto. I just picked a typical scene on Pluto. You know, great big Charon here. You know, dinky little sun, clouds, and it's pink. I think Pluto would be a very, very pretty little place to visit. I think it's got once again, it has an insanely wide variety of landscapes for such a small world. I've probably done 20 or 25 illustrations of Pluto, and every conceivable landscape you could possibly imagine, from canyons to mountains. But I thought I'd pick this. It's an eruption of a mud volcano on Pluto. Since there are apparently remnants of these things, I thought I'd show it in operation. That's another advantage of being a space artist. I can show things that happened in the past or future on our world, or on parts of a planet that we haven't seen yet. Here's Rosetta flying by the comet whose name I can't remember.
$67P.
Thank you. I knew there was a P involved in it, but I can't remember what it was called. I have I have notes here for some of the pictures coming up, because I have a terrible time remembering names, especially of exoplanets. So I had to make some notes so I wouldn't sound too stupid. Once again, this is a little model that my wife made for me. This is made out of paper. It's made out of paper. I'll get far afield. I'm gonna do a jetting galaxy. I really tried to at least get a good impression of how energetic these things must really be. It's a poor star being torn apart, eaten alive by a black hole. This is for Scientific American. Poor star. This is a planet orbiting a pulsar.
Oh.
I looked at my catalog and I have something like 400, almost 400 pictures I've done of exoplanets. So I had to pick just a few. We'd be here all night if I showed you all of them. Exoplanets really fascinate me, and every time I read about one, it's something new, and or something new or something particularly strange. But I figured any planet orbiting anywhere in the vicinity of a pulsar would probably have some pretty spectacular auroras, because of all the energy coming out of it, bombarding it from the pulsar. So that's a theory behind that. Oh, yeah, Betelgeuse, since it's in the news. This was for an astronomy book. I can't think of the title off the top of my head. The different ideas of why Betelgeuse is doing the weird things it is. One is that massive sunspots coming and going, huge flares, maybe dark clouds of gas and dust passing in front of it, or an orbit around it. So these are just illustrating different ideas about what might be going on. Two neutron stars colliding. This is for Scientific American again. And once again, I'm just trying to get across some idea of the insane energies that these things must be involving. And things like this, you have to take a lot of liberties because, you know, to see this with a naked eye, it'd probably, you know, burn through the back of your head if you could see anything at all. So you have to kind of try to make it realistic at the same time, not realistic. Yeah, so you have to decide what you leave out, what you put in, what you can fudge to get the right idea across. This is, I have to look at my notes here. This is Beta Pictoris. Well, that's actually Beta Pictoris. This is Beta Pictoris B. This is the dust ring around Beta Pictoris seen edge on. So the planet itself is how it looks. I knew it was good. It was a super Jupiter, so I figured, well, why not a super Jupiter with rings? Just because it'll look cool. That's one of the advantages of exoplanets. Once I get the basic parameters right, I'm pretty free to do what I like. So, you know, I can make it look, you know, neat if I want to. And this is Coro 7b, which orbits like in some stupid distance from its star. So it's perpetually molten. It's an Earth-like world, but it's, you know, it's a molten planet. I also like doing volcanoes, so there's an excuse to do that. This is an eyeball world. I think these are mostly speculative. It's tidally locked with its star. So you get the hot spot here, and it gets cooler and cooler until you get the frozen anti-solar part. And they've nicknamed these things eyeball worlds, I guess because of that, you know, like giant eyeballs, I suppose. But once again, every time I hear a concept, hear a new idea that might be expressed visually, I try to come up with an illustration for it. This is K2-18b, which I depicted as an ocean world, which as I recall, that it was speculated that there's a lot of water on this planet, maybe all ocean. So that's so I thought I'd just do an ocean planet. And Kappa Ceti B, a really super flare star over here, and which in turn is causing lots of auroras on B here. This is Kepler 1625b. A super Jupiter.
Ron, were some of these used in the recent NASA posters of the planets, and you know, take a vacation to Mars and stuff like that?
What just one was the Jupiter was.
Okay, look familiar. Beautiful.
Ron, did you ever attempt to do something with the TRAPPIST system?
Oh, I did a whole series of them, and I can't recall if I included any or not. I've done I've done an illustration of each one of them.
Ah, okay, great.
Yeah.
I thought that would be too hard to resist. Yeah.
Oh, it was. Oh, I didn't even try to resist it. I think the TRAPPIST system is just amazing. And I almost put it in here, but I figured with the time limitations, I couldn't put everything in. I mean, I could when I get done with this, I could go to the main portfolio and pull it up for you.
No
But
sweat.
yeah,
No sweat.
I done one for each. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think they're great.
You know, I have a question about some of your pictures. Some of them, when you look at them, they actually look like they're moving. Do you have some notion of how you do that?
No, because I think you just think they're moving.
Some of
They're
them
not.
look like they are if you stare at them. Not this
Oh,
one.
I'm glad that has that. I'm glad they have that effect.
Yeah, some of them do, and some of them look very stationary. And I was wondering, is there a technique that you use?
No,
make-
that's not intentional.
Hmm.
No, these are flat as pancakes.
John, you gotta stay off the sauce.
This is Proxima Centauri, and as it orbits a flare star, which is down here below the horizon. It's causing lots of auroras, and that's the sun right there. Our sun, I mean.
Wow.
This is a totally imaginary world. This is a triplanetary system. There's 3 planets orbiting each other. It's 1, 2, and 3. And this was done for an article on life in the universe. So I wanted to show. So the basic subject is this: all the plant life.
Looks like a great vacation spot.
I would go there in a heartbeat.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in.
Wherever it is. The next bunch of things I told you, even though all the previous pictures have been digital, they've almost all been for publication. But I really like going downstairs, my little corner, and doing painting still, because there's this. It's very different than doing digital art. So I picked out 5 or 6 from just I've done the past year, or even the past 8 or 9 months. So these are all traditional media. These are all acrylic paintings on illustration board. So I thought I'd show some of these just to show off. So that's, and it's also nice to remind myself sometimes I can still do this after doing, painting digitally. So this is Saturn seen from Rhea. These are about 15 by 20 inches. This is the shadow of Charon on Pluto seen from Charon. And I think a hotel on this place right here would be pretty cool. Imagine getting up in the middle of the night and seeing that looking in your hotel window.
Space B&B.
I mean, try to get a good night's sleep after that. Once again, I have this, I like Pluto because I have this connection. So this is a typical scene on Pluto. At least what I think a typical scene on Pluto would look like. The mountains of eternal light, South Pole of Earth's moon. It's I probably don't have to explain that because I'm sure you all know what that's supposed to be. A scene on Mars. I put little astronauts in this one, a la Chesley Bonestell. No place particular on Mars. Just what I thought would be a nice, typical Mars. Eroded mountains, some snow and ice, pink sky. As I recall, this is Saturn seen from Iapetus. And this, as I recall, I didn't make any notes on these. This is an eclipse of, I'm trying to think what it was. Oh, I think it was eclipse of Myra. Myra Ceti. That's it. With its little companion, white dwarf.
The
An eclipse of the sun by Jupiter. Pardon?
I was gonna say the perspective and scale in all your images makes you feel like you're standing right there looking.
No, thank you. That's what I'm hoping for. So I'm glad to hear that. I don't get out much, so it's really nice to hear these things. This is Jupiter eclipsing the sun, seen from Europa. And Pluto again.
I think that with
Just
your
because-
mind moving throughout the universe like this, that you really don't need to go out much. You'd be
Yeah, well,
you'd be
You'd be
disappointed.
disappointed.
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, I live in a very, very tiny little town in Southern Virginia. My neighbors don't entirely understand what I do. And that's it. That's my show and tell.